Pull yourself up a chair and join us at the Energy Roundtable.
Welcome to Energy Roundtable. On this week, we have a special topic. We're talking about the updated, finally released, 2-year late Canadian federal budget. I have my leftover Easter chocolate ready and a coffee. I'm ready to go. Lisa, why don't you lead us in? This was your idea to spend most of our roundtable talking about this. So set the proverbial table for us, will you?
Yeah, no, thanks, Matt. So I wanted to, normally we do, 2 or 4 articles really between the two of us, I guess. And, obviously with the release of this budget, it's huge. There's a lot more to it than I think what we're going to cover today, in the sense that we're going to try and keep it maybe a little more energy focused. So closer in discussion to the 17.6 billion specifically that they're suggesting, and from a spending perspective. But the article for people, and in case they want to look it up, it's titled.
Lisa, before we jump in, can we just give a shout out that this is Canada's first budget released by a woman? I think that's amazing. I think it's
oh yes, right, yeah.
Regardless of where you are on the political spectrum, the fact that Minister Freeland was the first female Minister of Finance and brought that to the table. Some people might say she's the real Prime Minister in this country, but we'll leave that. Regardless, cool that that's a milestone to celebrate. So anyways, tee up the article for us and let's dive right in.
No, great point, Matt. So the article is titled Liberal Climate Plan Got Greener to Tune of $17.6 billion. It is from the Toronto Star and the author is Alex Ballingall. But I'm going to actually be referring to a couple of different documents here. We actually get consulted by Sussex Strategy, so I'm going to be referring to some of the stuff that's in that, as well as a lot of what really the $17.6 billion covers. So how do you want to go about doing this today, Matt? Do you want me to kind of list off some of what the article talks about in terms of what the 17.6 billion is going to be covering, or what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, give us some anecdotes and we can maybe we can pull them apart one at a time.
Sure. So I guess the first one here is that Ottawa will give businesses a tax credit for carbon capture, utilization, and storage projects. Then Ottawa's planning to issue its first green bond to raise $5 billion in the current fiscal year to fund infrastructure, clean tech, and conservation projects. The budget's also aimed at reducing emissions from residential buildings with a $4.4 billion program to provide homeowners and landlords with interest-free loans of $40,000 for deep home retrofits. So that, just for clarity, is to include better insulation, energy efficient furnaces, water tanks, solar panels, and new windows, things like that.
That only applies to deep homes, right? It doesn't apply to shallow homes.
That's right. That's correct. And then it includes a $1.4 billion, $1.4 billion over 5 years for wildfire mitigation projects, improved stormwater systems, and the restoration of wetlands and shorelines. There's $3.4 billion over the next 5 years to protect more of Canada's land and oceans in order to achieve the government's goal of placing 25% of it under official conservation by 2025. And then, of course, this new plan will also increase the national minimum carbon price to $170 per ton of emissions by 2030, which, of course, we covered off a couple of weeks ago when the Supreme Court of Canada deemed it constitutional to impose that from a federal perspective across the provinces. So, and there's actually a lot more. This is just from the article that I listed from the Toronto Star. In addition to that, there's stuff that falls out of this energy realm, like childcare and agriculture and air travel and things like that. But there's a lot just to cover in the end.
Yeah. So let's take those one by one. So the first one was this. It was a tax credit for carbon capture and utilization.
That's right. Yep.
And does it give any mechanics in terms of how that works? Like, what is the tax credit? Is it a
Basically just says projects that negate emissions by drawing carbon from the atmosphere with the aim of increasing Canada's annual carbon capture from 4 megatons to 15 megatons. But that's actually all the article states. It's a pretty short article, but it does give a pretty good summary of what's being covered by the 17.6 billion.
My sense is that this one is one of the biggest, like, so carbon capture, I think 5 years ago was like, well, that's a pipe dream. That's not going to happen. I think the technology is maturing, and it's what because there's a lot of processes that we can't get away from, right? We talk about, oil and gas and driving our cars, but that's not the only place that oil and gas derivatives go to. So, your glasses are made of plastic, there's all these derivatives that come, from oil and gas that we're always going to need. And so we're always going to emit carbon, we can't totally get away from it. How do we capture it? And I think what's interesting structurally is that a tax credit, I think this is a nod, I think, to the oil and gas patch, to acknowledge we're always going to admit it, we better capture it. And the tax credit allows people to, put it against, their tax credits are only good if you're paying taxes, which are only apply when you're making money, right? And so for developers or people who are building projects, it doesn't make, whereas people who are spending money to make money or are already making money, like oil and gas, especially with the price of oil going up, I hope this will be, really provide traction to them and really incentivize. So the carbon capture one is, you've maybe had more exposure to carbon capture than I have, but that's an exciting one, I think.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it's very exciting. And just because we're on the topic of, gas, natural gas, I don't know if you've read or seen this yet, but basically what they're planning to also do as part of this program is expand class 43.1 and 43.2 of the accelerated capital cost allowance. And that's actually going to cover, we'll call it, well, there's a whole slew of technologies here. I'll name a couple off. Electricity generation equipment that uses physical barriers or dam-like structures to harness the kinetic energy of flowing water. There's equipment used to produce solid and liquid fuels. For example, wood pellets and renewable diesel from specified waste material or carbon dioxide. So I'm assuming that that's going to cover potentially, AD facilities, maybe from landfill or wastewater treatment plants or organics. There is a broad range of equipment used for the production of hydrogen by electrolysis of water. The equipment used to dispense hydrogen for use in hydrogen-powered automotive equipment and vehicles. So I give all that a thumbs up because I think expanding the class is great. What I was a little bit disappointed with, though, not sure if
I've heard this rumor, but confirm it. Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, they're proposing the removal of certain fossil fuel related items from the capital cost allowance, which include fossil fueled enhanced combined cycle systems. So they've further defined that by a gas generating equipment for which more than 1/4 of the total fuel energy input is from fossil fuels determined on an annualized basis. So I was sad to see that because to me, this is where the federal government might be a little bit short-sighted on the fact that, here they are promoting the expansion of class 43.1, 43.2 of the CCA to include things like hydrogen. And I think, unless I'm misreading it, renewable natural gas or biogas. But yet there are so many different types of equipment that can run on that very fuel. And so to remove it from the CCAs, I thought, well, why are they doing that?
But the way I interpret what you're saying is as long as you can run that equipment, but it's the fuel that's the issue, not the equipment. Isn't that right?
Well, yes, it's the fuel, but they're taking it away, the CCA, from what I understand, again, from combined cycle systems. So the equipment itself, they're not allowing that under an accelerated CCA.
I thought you said if the fuel was over 25%.
Yes, that's correct. If for more than one, so for equipment that is using more than 1/4 of the total fuel energy input from fossil fuels.
Right. So if you run a CHP on renewable natural gas, you still qualify.
Correct. But the problem is we're in the middle of this transition, right? Where from, when you think about technology and where it is today and where cost of natural gas is, fossil fuel natural gas in comparison with RNG and hydrogen, as carbon tax continues with, based on fossil fuel to go up, there is going to be that inception point where hydrogen and renewable natural gas start to decline. And then you kind of wonder, so now this might take away from some people investing in that, perhaps.
Well, yeah, it's interesting. I think that some of the reading I've done on it implies that that comes into effect in 2024. So there is a bit of a transitionary period to allow for that. But yeah, it's unfortunate. I think this is, as my mother used to say, you've heard me say it before, we need those on the extremes to move the middle. And so I think this budget in a whole is extreme. And so it's intended to move us away from fossil generation. So, but it is for our space in energy, the accelerated depreciation, taking that and depreciating it early on in the life cycle of the asset, when money's more valuable is a really key benefit. And so to apply that to more technologies, that's pretty cool. What were some other things there? The green bonds, I think.
Yeah, there's green bonds, $5 billion in the current fiscal year to fund infrastructure. So clean tech and conservation projects was another one.
I wonder how they're going to roll that out in terms of, how do you get access to that? Does that imply, like, who owns the assets? Is it public-private partnership? I mean, that's the problem with some of these budgets, right? It takes a while to get the details, and then does the thing get dragged down and caught in the details? We'll have to see, right?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's obviously there's just not enough information for us to kind of really know how, we're going to be affected, or other people in general, or just the industry will be affected, because it's there's just not enough detail there at all.
Yeah. I'm only by the way, you're
that's interesting. I don't know why now.
Yeah.
Any better?
A little bit, yeah, because you're farther away.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Very weird. Maybe it's something to do with my camera or the recording today. The next one is $4.4 billion to provide homeowners and landlords with interest-free loans of $40,000 for deep home retrofits. So those are those projects that include insulation or energy-efficient furnaces, water tanks, solar panels, new windows, things like that. I think that's kind of neat.
Is there anything, Lisa, in terms of investment in innovation, like because it, particularly technology innovation and technology development, is that in there at all?
Yes, it is, and I read it yesterday, and I'm going to see if I can find it quickly. So the title that at least we have from our Sussex report is Center for Innovation and Clean Energy. So it looks like the government will, in partnership with the government of British Columbia, provide up to $35 million to help establish the Center for Innovation and Clean Energy to advance the scale up and commercialization of clean technologies in BC and across Canada. So is that maybe the line you were thinking about?
Yeah, I think whenever we can drive innovation and technology development, I think that's a real. It's one thing to facilitate projects, and that's important. But if we can facilitate technology that can take a step function change in what we're doing, like the CCUS, like carbon capture, but how do we have breakthroughs in electrolysis technology for hydrogen? How do we have breakthroughs in solar PV or whatever, right? That's if we can be at the leading edge of that as Canadians, then there's an export opportunity too, right?
That's right.
So cool.
That's right.
Any other kind of last highlights before we get to the face?
The other one here has to do with wetlands, so I'll skip over that one. This is kind of related, kind of not, but I'll put it out there again. So $3.4 billion over the next 5 years to protect more of Canada's land and oceans in order to achieve the government's goal of placing 25% of it under official conservation by 2025. So protecting our green lands, essentially.
Cool. Well, the stuff will cascade down, right? And it'll be interesting to see what the details are, how they roll out into programs. Part of me is skeptical because, how do we get this into real projects? How do we get this, are there going to be so many barriers and so much red tape that, projects aren't going to happen? I hope not. I mean, I know it's hard to give away money freely, but we'll see.
Yeah, I'd love to see I mean, I'm sure, over the coming weeks or months, we'll kind of see more of a point form list to kind of understand for ourselves how we can get involved and how our clients can get involved. But yeah, there's still lots to dig into here, that's for sure.
Cool. Well, let's bring our Mark Charbonneau in for our face-off. Mark, are you there?
I'm here.
All right. What do you got for us today?
Well, today on our face-off segment, the topic will be, is Canada doing the right thing by spending itself out of the COVID recession? And what I'll do is I'll flip a coin. I've got my quarter here.
Okay.
See it? And I'll allow the...
Who's on the back of that quarter?
Who's on the back of it? Queen Elizabeth.
We're recording this the day after her 95th birthday, so happy birthday to the Queen.
Oh, okay. Excellent. All right, so I'll allow Lisa to call it in the air, so you can go heads or tails. If you guess correctly, you get to choose whether you take the pro or the con side. All right.
All right, sounds good.
Right. Here we go.
Heads.
It is tails.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So that means Matt, you get to choose. Yeah, you get to choose what you want.
I will choose, and I'm just going to jump right in. I will choose that Canada is not doing the right thing, spending their way out of the. I think first of all, I think the economy and the indications are that the economy will rebound just fine on its own. Thank you very much. As we come out of this, I think there's a lot of pent up demand. I know there's pent up demand in my house to go to Florida, as an example. So, and that doesn't help the Canadian economy necessarily, but I think there's pent up demand that will drive a lot of interesting things. And I really, as I've said before, and I said earlier in this roundtable, I don't think that government is in the best place to really invest and create multipliers and returns. And I think that they're going to be cumbersome in their rollout. I think they're going to be they're going to be slow to move, and they may or may not align with where industry's going. I like the tax credit one that we talked about for carbon capture. I think that's exciting. I don't know if that's not really spending, I don't think. But so I think that may drive some behavior, but just to kind of spend and to, give money away and try to, this notion that if the government can just print money and invest, and then the economy will take off on its own. I know there's some macroeconomic theory around as long as if it's cheap money and the economy grows faster than the interest rate on the money, it makes sense. But call me a bit more of a small government kind of guy. I don't think it's the right thing to do because the economy is going to recover halfway on their own. But Lisa, I'm open to your theory that they are doing the right thing as Canadians.
All right, so I'll take the other stance. I'll try to do this in 2 minutes. So I think that it's important to be thinking about the three main elements in terms of how you get out of a recession or a debt in the first place. So one of them is, you can tamper spending, which might be a little bit challenging when you're talking about government companies or even an individual from that perspective, because you have fixed costs. If Mark, you got a mortgage and you don't have daycare, but you've got costs, you've got fixed costs you can't change. Then you have, possibly an increase in revenue. You could get another job, make more money, but maybe a little bit hard to do in the case of, a pandemic. And then from a government's perspective or lens, to increase taxes right now, probably not the best idea. Then you can take on more debt. And I think, in this particular case, debt is not always a bad thing. You might have a $30,000 credit card debt if you're smart with the debt, and you go to a line of credit and you take that money and you pay off your credit card because it's got a lower interest rate on it. You might actually get further ahead. So it's short-term pain for long-term gain. So when we talk about the debt, I think the reality is the burden on the debt right now is low because interest rates are low. They've been at one of their lowest points in history. And so I think it's a great opportunity to embrace this kind of global transformation that we're going through to green and clean the economy. I think it'll give marginalized people such as women who have had to leave the workforce and, who have had to take care of their families, a chance to get back at their, into their careers. It allows small businesses to rebuild themselves so that, you and I can visit our favorite restaurants again. And maybe even more importantly, it gets the nearly 300,000 Canadians that had jobs before the pandemic back to work. So if the debt is a little bit like food feeding a hamster, and every time you feed the hamster, you get that wheel turning and you get that momentum going, I think that's what's really needed to grow our way out of this pandemic. And basically, like we did post-war period of the 1950s.
You had me, Lisa, until you dropped a pet analogy in. and then, as you know, and Mark, I know I think you have a dog. I know you're a big advocate, and I love that. Everybody needs a cause. I think you're very noble about it, Mark. But for me, you've lost me on the pet analogy, Lisa.
I lost you on the hamster? Oh.
You lost me on the hamster, and I love the, to be clear, I like the notion of some kind of, getting to an equal playing field. The fact that women have been adversely affected by that sucks. I hate it. How do we fix that? I struggle with the debt piece. If you take people who now are coming into the market buying houses at, well beyond, I think, what their means are, and very low interest rates can only go up, right? And that's a risk. And so, when you spend too much, I think you expose yourself to some of that risk, right? So, and the other thing I struggle with federal spending is there's no consequences, right? Like, these people can just print money and write checks, and that that'll get them through the next election, and then by the next election, when everybody will forget. So only time will tell. But anyways, you can have one last rebuttal since I tore you up on that.
Well, I think the reality is it's really it's easy to think about it from a personal perspective. It's really easy to think about it from, I wouldn't even say easy. It's a little bit harder from a company perspective. But then if you take it from with the lens of looking through a government lens, it's just so much more complicated. So there's so many aspects to this funding or the spending in terms of pros and cons. It's really hard to know what the right answer is to and the right what we should be doing.
Yeah. Mark, we got a winner?
Well, this was a tough choice, but I would have to agree more so with Matt's argument. Only I just think that the people will probably bring us back out of the recession sooner than the government will, and I think that once this is all over, people will be willing to spend their money and sort of even it out a little bit, I guess.
There we go. There's the real winner.
Personal opinion versus looking at this through a neutral lens.
Yeah, exactly. So
I'll see myself in the mirror.
I have to keep my poker face with these glasses because it was a tough decision.
Yeah.
It's not Daniel Toronto. Who's the poker player that wears that?
There's a couple of them actually.
But I have to say,
Phil Hellmuth.
Phil Hellmuth, that's it. Yeah.
That was surprised that he won that one. I saw his face there. He thought I was going to win it.
Really?
I thought you won that one, Lisa. Quite frankly.
Oh
yeah. It was good. It was good. So, well, Mark, thank you. Great question as always. Lisa, great article. The federal budget. We'll continue to watch it closely on all of our different forums. To our listeners, thank you. And until next Energy Roundtable, stay safe and have fun. Thank you both.
Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.
Guys.